When we're doing the scoring, the ARYA has approved that you can use either HMS, if you're using HMS, the Simplified Heat System, if you're using that, or the A-Fleet app. Now, the A-Fleet app, Julian will be able to tell you more about that, but the A-Fleet app is very, very good for single fleet racing, all right? I am old-fashioned. I prefer to do it on HMS, and I prefer each of the fleets to do it on HMS, but my reason for that is so that they've got people within the club that know how to use HMS. You know, it's no use it's all using the A-Fleet app, and then we go to an event and we have to use HMS. So that's my thing. So just going back a bit, like we said, when you're selecting the number of heats you have, you've got to have as few heats as possible because the heats take time. It takes time to run. All right? What are the things that can determine how big the heats are going to be?
Number of entries. Weather conditions.
Entries, weather condition.
Size of the fleet.
Size of the boat, size of the start line available. All right? So sometimes you have to go to an extra fleet to get the numbers down in each fleet. Like if you've got 10 raiders sailing where they sail up in that channel, they've got a very small start line. All right? You wouldn't want more than 10 raiders on that start line. So you may have to extend the number of fleets. If you've got a big long start line, you can say, oh, well, I'll get 18, 20 boats on that start line. That will determine that, all right? But we keep the fleets as low as possible, but it is generated by the type of boat and the venue you've got.
But just on that, so for instance, at Paradise, you're sailing up the canal,
yep.
But then the next day the weather changes again, you've got the bigger bay there. Yeah. Can you change from 3 to 2 for the next day?
No. You can go down a fleet, but you can't go up. All right, but what you can do, you can change between 4 and 6. But make sure before you make that decision that the scorer knows how to change between 4 and 6. All right, because otherwise you're causing a lot of trouble. It's not just a simple matter of we're going to have 4, but you can easily go down a fleet. If you get the boat numbers down, people not turning up the second day and stuff, you can easily drop it back a fleet. The program doesn't have any problem with that. It can sometimes throw a hissy fit if you try to go the other way. Say, you know, no, get your act together, I'm not playing. If you read the explanatory notes, 6 can only be used from 24 to 84 entries. Those tables we were looking at don't deal for under 24, all right? So if you've got 24 or up 20 entries or 20, you must go 4 up, 4 down. You haven't got a choice. It sounds a bit silly. To me, it'd be a bigger advantage if you've got the smaller fleets to actually use 6 up and 6 down, but the program won't accept it. All right?
What is the optimum number or maximum number of boats to constitute a one fleet regatta?
It depends on the boats, on the fleets itself, the venue, how big your start line can be. They're the major factors. If you've got a big long start line, you can go to 24. 24 10 raiders on a start line is a big start line, and there's big sails block out half the boats, and I prefer to have more fleets. It's easier to run more fleets.
Once you cross that threshold.
Once you've gone through the first couple of things, but with 4 fleets, what you've got a chance of doing is not getting tied up with protests. You can allocate people from the others to sort the protest out before, because if you've only got 2 fleets, there's a good chance he's either going to be promoted or dropped. If he's disqualified, he's going to be dropped, and he'll be sailing in the next race. So you can't sail that race until it's sorted out. You can, as I said, change between 4 boat promoted and 6 boat promotion. Not a recommended thing. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, I'm going to do 4 boats. You've got to actually tell the program that you're going to change from 4 to 6. Use 4 boats, like we said, when there's less of when the venue is only suitable for a smaller number of fleets, and to keep the sail number to a minimum. What I mean by that is if you're sailing on the borderline and you go 6 up, that means you're going to have to go to another fleet. So you're better off, even though you've got large numbers, keeping 4 up and staying down, keeping the number of fleets down. The race consists of each of the heats, therefore the more heats you got, the longer it takes to get a race. In world championships and that, you'll be lucky to get 3 or 4 races in a day. Breaking of ties. Everyone know how to break ties? Yeah. Yeah, my thing to finishers, don't have a tie. You make a decision, don't have a tie. With HMS, it can be a pain in the arse. It's all right at the end of the day, because it'll just go by the number of boats with the number of first, second, third places. But if it's to decide who's going to be promoted or demoted, and you got a tie, and how are you going to split that tie? You've got to go back right through the thing. Don't have a tie. So, rightio, so with HMS, that same sort of thing with average points. When you're breaking the ties, all right, race 1 results are excluded. You don't count race 1 results. As an exception to most of the sailing instructions, in race 1 only, there is no time-out limit with HMS. All boats shall be allowed to finish, provided they have started before the leading boat in the heat has finished. So if they started, they've got to be allowed to finish race 1 only. All right, the seeding race. Excluded scores. Now this has virtually been passed on to all racing. Races are excluded after 4 races are completed, after 8, 16, and then every 8 after that. A lot of ROs will push and push, and they'll even drop down the number of laps you do to try and get another drop. I'm not of that school. I don't care how many. People will tell me, oh, we did 26 races, you know, in a day. It was, well, if they'd done 26 races, that's because they were either small courses, you didn't give the skippers any breaks in between. To me, it's irrelevant how many races you get, as long as you get sufficient races in. So as long as it's more important for the quality of the race. To have a good course, and if that means you have to move the boys around, you move the boys around. All right, that is more important than getting 26 races in, which doesn't mean, because they were all bloody soldiers' courses up and down the thing and 15 metres apart. So don't get flustered about the number of races, and the drops will look after themselves. If you get up to 4 drops, great. If you get up to 3 drops, great. That's whatever it is. Protests involving the place of boats that may be promoted or request of redress which may result in a boat being promoted due to the place being HMS shall be heard before the start of the next heat. That's if the bloke is going to go up, all right, because he'll be sailing in the next heat, so it's got to be heard before the next heat. So if you've got more heats than that, protests involving boats that may be placed in a lower heat by a division can be heard as long as it's done before that boat's due to sail again. People get confused because it says that a place can only be given if the boat was on the last leg of the course. You all heard that? Giving a place is completely different to giving a score. You can be given a score anytime. There are some restrictions in the seating race, or some more restrictions in the seating race, but you can be given first a score of 1, but still have to drop down a fleet. Because you're on the last leg of the course, they can say, you come, we'll give you a score of 1, but your place is where you finished. So that means you get 1 point on the books, but you still have to drop back a fleet. A place can be only given if the boat was on the last leg of the course. And the other thing that must be drummed home, it must be, the incident's got to be through no fault of his own.
Are we still talking about now a situation that has arisen as a result of a request for redress, which is issued by a protest committee?
Only the RO can't give you a place. The RO can't give you a score. Only a protest committee can give you a score. There's a difference between given a place and given a score. Now, under HMS, why they say you can give a place on the last leg of the course, say a bloke had come around the bottom mark, was going up on starboard, was clearly going to finish first, gets taken out by a port tacker coming down. He was clearly going to finish first, he was in the right. All right? If they give him redress and give him a score, they could give him first place, but he'd still have to drop back a fleet. If he was on the last leg of the course, they can say, rightio, we will give you first place, or we will give you second place. The rest of the positions stay the same, but that means that you'll be promoted. So there's a big difference between giving a place and a score. And a place can only be given on the last leg of the course. Redress, as far as I'm concerned, is the most overrated things we've got. Redress is to make right. Most of our incidents are sailing incidents. All right? It's got to be through no fault of your own. No fault of your own. You 1%, you tacked it and didn't give him water, but they said, you know, well, we couldn't decide whether he had completed his tack or he hadn't completed his tack. All right. Although the port tacking boat may be disqualified, your redress should be turned down because they couldn't decide whether he'd completed his tack, he hadn't completed his tack, etc. So you contributed to that bloody incident. There's no way in the world, you know, you can say, oh, but it was only 1%. That's good enough not to get redress. When a bloke calls for water to tack, you've got to do three things. What are they?
You've got to tack straight away.
No.
He's got to declare his sail number.
Sail number.
Sail number, room to tack.
Room and tack. Those three words have got to be stated. They can be stated in any order. Now, why you got to call your sail numbers? It's not like being on a big boat where you're next to the boat you're going to do. You could be over the other side of the lake. You've got a lot of boats here that don't know you from a bar of salt, and you're calling out room to tack. Which boat's calling room to tack? Yeah. All right. Now, once they call room to tack, they're actually declaring that they want an instruction. Now, there's rules there when they can do. I know this is not a rules conference, but there's rules here. They've got to be hard on the wind. They've got to have to take action to avoid the... Once that bloke calls room to tack, you've only got two options. Whether you believe he could go further or not is irrelevant. Once he calls room to tack, you've got to say either you tack or you've got to tack yourself. All right, as soon as possible. Once you tack, the other boat must tack. You can't say, rightio, he's coming in, and this happens a lot on a bank, and he suddenly gets this big lift off the bank that's taking him up, so he carries on for another 20 metres up the bank. Soon as the other bloke has tacked, he must tack. All right. Also with that, any other boat that hears a call and will interfere with the bloke's tacking must take it as that was a call to him too.
Failure to tack on the part of the boat who initially called room to tack is ground for protest.
Yes, certainly it is. He'll be disqualified because he didn't meet the requirements of the rule. We've got rules provided with three reasons for having rules. What are they? So it's fairness,
Yeah.
safety,
Yeah.
all right, and it provides a means for tactics. Without rules, you wouldn't have any tactics. All right, so it provides a means. That particular rule we're talking about falls under the safety category. Now, they're more concerned about boats not getting smashed up than they are that you think he called you to...
Deliberately.
Yeah. If you think he called you deliberately, you can protest him.
Okay.
Because he hasn't met the requirements of the rule. The other big thing that will happen is you two boats will tack. There will be another boat coming on starboard out further. You two boats have to tack back. You can't, just because you called room to tack, soon as you tack, that rule is over. So a new situation of miles, and you've got port and starboard. So you've got to tack back even if you go 10 feet. You can then call for room to come off the bank again.
You can't claim room to tack if you're sailing away from the instruction, surely.
No, but they do. They'll say, you know, oh, I've called room to tack. But the room to tack only lasts as long, once you've tacked, that's it. That rule's over. So what rules come in now? Port starboard, windward leeward. We've put out a fair bit of information today. Now, for a lot of people that come looking for club ROs and stuff like that, what we've actually discussed can be transcribed into clubs. All right? It just gives you an idea of what is supposed to happen to have a good regatta. What I'd like to finish up with is the principles of sportsmanship and fair play. The basic primary rule, or principal rule, and the rule 2 says that you've got to perform in accordance with the principles of sportsmanship and fair play. But they don't tell you what the principles of sportsmanship and fair play. They only tell you what one of them is. What's that one? If you breach the rules, you'll immediately get clear of the fleet and do a penalty. All right. The rest of the rules, it's up to your or the protest committee interpretation of whether it is a breach of the principle. World Sailing and the AOIA have put out a list of things that can be considered a breach of Rule 2 or Rule 69. They've categorised it into 4 categories: respect for the rules, respect for competitors, respect for race officials, and respect for property. Respect for the rules: knowingly breaking a rule and not taking a penalty. Now, a lot of these sound like they're the same: deliberately breaking a rule, intentionally breaking a rule to gain an unfair advantage. Now, that's like I was saying this morning with the boats coming in on port, continually coming in on port, taking boats out. That can be, if they do it a few times, that can be considered a breach of Rule 2 if one of the skippers want to protest it under Rule 2. All right? Knowingly breaking a rule, the same as if you're over the start line. People will tell you, I wasn't called. Don't admit it, the bloody thing, yeah, I thought I was over, but I wasn't called, because the responsibility is yours. You knew you broke the rule, get out and do the penalty. 2 boats come together, port and starboard, and the bloke says, don't worry about it, sail on. Is that allowable? No, it's a breach of the rules. Because it may not be in Flint, he mightn't be concerned about it, but the boats behind him might be concerned about it, and it could be the difference between a bloke running a regatta and not running a regatta. That comes down that he knowingly broke a rule. All right, and it goes to a protest committee, they should say, you know, well, you discussed it, you knew you broke the rule, why didn't you do a penalty? Respect for the rules. I'd hate to be on the protest committee when these come in, because they're very subjective, and usually it has to be that there is a pattern of it, that they've been doing it all the time. Collusion with another competitor to ignore, which may aggrieve or disadvantage other competitors. You can't collude with another boat to benefit the other boat. Respect for other competitors. Once again, a lot of these are very hard to prove. But bullying, intimidation or harassment, verbal abuse, unnecessary shouting or foul language can also be considered a breach of Rule 2. As I said before, if you're protesting someone, 2-6 protest 1-5, 2-6 protest 1-5. 1-5 decides, no, that's rubbish. 1-5 protest 2-6. 1-5 protest 2-6. That should be all that's said. Control area is not a place to conduct an ad-lib bloody protest hearing. And that really pees a lot of people off when they start yelling at each other and they're going around. What you've got to be careful of as a RO, and I said it earlier in the morning, what a lot of people have a tendency to, they'll get in an argument with each other. Their whole purpose of getting in the argument with each other is that it becomes too difficult, neither of them do a penalty and sail on. In that case, the RO has the option to protest both the boats. You can't say, well, Ellen was in the right, so I'll protest Daniel. You haven't got the power to do that. But you can protest both the boats and let the committee decide, the protest committee decide who was right and wrong.
So you would, if that went on and on for half a lap, then you would protest both of the boats?
No, what I would do first is I'd say behaviour penalty 2615, 720 turn. I hope, broad brush, we've given you some idea where the information is contained in these books. So what you do is, if a situation comes up, look up the book and do it.